Midwest. Millions of Americans are under some sort of winter weather alert. The Twin Cities and parts of Minnesota are bracing for what could be their biggest blizzard in 30 years. Norfolk Southern has been ordered by the EPA to foot the bill for cleaning up East Palestine, Ohio, where its train derailed. The company's CEO tells CNBC the town is safe and the Oleato. Jessica Ettinger, CNBC.
Attention. Per the current government mandate, U.S.-based insurers are now required to cover at-home COVID testing kits with no out-of-pocket fees to you. If you have a current insurance plan, you are eligible to receive up to 8 COVID-19 tests shipped to you each month absolutely free, as long as the government mandate is in effect. Just visit testkitforfree.com to register now from the comfort of your own home. That's testkitforfree.com to receive your tests shipped to you at no cost. Go to testkitforfree.com today. Paid for by TRO Health.
At Staples, you can count on every project being print perfect, guaranteed.
I need presentations and brochures printed, and they have to be perfect.
Your bounded presentations, brochures with the finest folds, and more will be done right every time. That's our Print Big promise. Now at Staples, get $10 off your document printing and marketing materials order of $50 or more, plus 20% back via store bonus. Try Staples and see the difference. Ends 2/25. Rewards members only. Bonus must be redeemed in store. See staples.com/stores/printbig for details.
Are you underpaid and overworked? Is a living wage and employee benefits like affordable health care more of a dream than a reality for you and your family? If so, it's time to form a union. Don't be denied the wages and benefits you deserve. Come together in a union with the power of numbers. A union is not a privilege, it's your right, and it will make a difference. Contact Teamsters Local 1932, a powerful and successful labor union in San Bernardino, by visiting Teamsters1932.org/organize to start today. Labor unions built the middle class, and the middle class built America. That's the message from Teamsters Local 1932, a strong and successful labor union based in San Bernardino that represents over 14,000 hardworking people across the Inland Empire. The Teamsters are ready to help you organize for better pay, increased benefits, and improved working conditions. Reach out to Teamsters 1932 at Teamsters1932.org/organize to speak with an organizer today.
One of the best ways to build a healthier
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show on KCAA. We'll be right back after this message from our sponsor, Teamsters 1932, a strong union with 14,000 members in the IE. Go to Teamsters1932.org for more information.
Are you looking for a good union job? The Inland Empire's 14,000-member-strong Teamsters Local 1932 has opened a training center to get working people trained and placed in open positions in public service clerical work and in jobs in the logistics industry. This is a new opportunity to advance your career and raise standards across the region. Visit 1932trainingcenter.org to enroll today. That's 1932trainingcenter.org. Are you graduating high school soon and wondering what to do next? College is one option, but why not consider the high-paying jobs made possible by union power? Labor Union Teamsters Local 1932 has opened a training center to get you into the high school to high-paying job pipeline. You'll learn all the skills needed to excel in opportunities across industries. Visit 1932trainingcenter.org to enroll today. That's 1932trainingcenter.org. One of the best ways to build a healthier local economy is by shopping locally. Teamster Advantage is a shop local program started by Teamster Local 1932 that has brought together hundreds of locally owned businesses to provide discounts for residents who make shopping locally their priority. Everything from restaurants like Corky's to fun times at SB Raceway and much, much more. If you're not currently a Teamster and you want access to these local business discounts, contact Jennifer at 909-889-8377, extension 224. Give her a call. That number again is 909-889-8377, extension 224.
Now, here is the voice voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Well, looks like Donald Trump lost again. It's like the 15th, 20th time lost in the 2020 election. This time, a trio of Utah brothers sought to throw Joe Biden out of the White House. Took their case to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court decided not to hear it. So I guess it's over. Another rejection. Another one of those moments. We're going to replace Biden and bring. It was one of those. You know, we're bringing Trump back. There was a glimmer of hope, and well, the Supreme Court slammed the door. Now, interestingly enough, on the Trump front, the Fulton County, Georgia special grand jury. Evidently, recommendations for multiple people to be indicted. The one comment that's getting a lot of play was by one of the jurors who was asked whether they had recommended indictment for Donald Trump, and she said that, well, you're not going to be shocked. It's not rocket science. You won't be too surprised. And you go, okay, I'm not. Who? If I'm not going to be surprised, is it going to be Trump? Maybe. Is it going to be Rudy Giuliani? Is it going to be Sidney Powell? Is it going to be Lynn Wood? Is it going to be Lindsey Graham? I now have to know. What we are going to find out soon enough. But multiple people possibly for indictment. Should be a fun summer. Should be fun. Also, today, spent a little time in Washington, D.C. Decided to go and have some meetings, talk with some supporters, just kind of get a feel for how things are going. They're out of session, so you get to talk with people who, know what's going on. So I spent the day, roaming around, the Rayborn and the Longworth building, and I spent some time, wandering around the Capitol grounds, talking with people, and wow, Republicans are losing their mind over the fact that Joe Biden went to Ukraine. Literally losing their minds that he, how dare he won't go visit, rattle off the southern border or Ohio, or how dare he go to Ukraine? How dare he talk about saving those Ukrainians' pensions? And I was sitting in the Longworth building's cafeteria area, and I was waiting for somebody, and I was just reading my book, and there was a table full of like 8 staffers. They clearly Republican staffers, because they were losing their minds, and they were going on, how dare we? We're going to start World War III. We're going to do all this stuff. And all of your right-wing talking points, they got them down. They of course they got them from the Heritage Foundation and the RNC, and so they've got it all down, and they're singing from the same hymnal. They're singing from the same book, and when there was a break, I kind of looked at one of them and I said, I guess you're Republican staffers, and he kind of sheepishly and I was shocked, kind of sheepishly said, yeah. Probably didn't want me to know. I go, I don't want to know who you work for. Just was curious if you were. I go, have you thought about the fact that for $100 billion, the Russian military has been basically destroyed, and that we spent trillions of dollars throughout the Cold War trying to do that, and it was just $100 billion that we gave the Ukrainians to defend themselves? Have you thought about that at all? And it was one of these, kind of like he didn't know what to say, because someone had, I wasn't going to yell at him. I was just going to, have you thought about this? Have you thought about the fact that if we don't stop them in Ukraine, Poland's next. And what that means is if they go into Poland, a NATO country, that means we have to send you, because there will be a draft if we get into this major war. You and people like you in your early 20s who are going to be drafted to go into this. And it's not going to be it's not going to be a ground acquisition war, because ultimately, if you go into Poland, that means the West and NATO have to defend Poland, and the Russians know they can't win that. So what does that mean? That means either they're going to pull in the Chinese and the Iranians, so we have a new axis of evil, and who knows where that goes? I mean, does this just get uglier and uglier as they roll, the machine rolls on down the road, or do we start lobbing nukes at each other? The Ukrainians fighting for themselves, because look, the Rage Against the War Machine people were still, there were a couple of them lingering around the Capitol. Had a chance to talk to some of them as well. And look, I love the idea of, I'm anti-war myself most of the time. This is not one of those moments. This is a moment where you go, Russia clearly invaded Ukraine. Oh, but the Nazis, no. Russia clearly invaded Ukraine. Ukraine is a sovereign country. Whether it's a democratic country or not, we can debate and argue if we have to. But the simple fact is, Putin invaded Ukraine. As a citizen of this planet, of this globe, that can't happen. And you can't allow that steamroller to continue. Because Poland's next, and the Baltic states are coming, which is why they're sending so much, and they're supporting this so heavily. So we had this little conversation around this, and I said, the reality is, when I was your age, the concern was, it was the end of humanity, that we would be kind of in a moment of lobbing nukes at each other. Had someone told me all we'd have to do is spend $100 billion to take down their war machine, I think that's a pretty reasonable deal. But the Republicans, and this is where I'm still struggling. I'm struggling with the fact that you have Republican legislators, probably who those kids worked for, out there saying that we should pull the money away from them, we should leave Ukraine on an island, screw them, let Russia do whatever they want, and my other favorite, we should engage in diplomacy. This is one of those moments, like I tried to explain to my kids. I said, I don't want you starting fights. I don't want you throwing the first punch. I don't want you to be the one looking for trouble. You try and get yourself out of it. If something happens, turn and walk away. But the second that you realize that there's no more talking, that someone is already beating you up, you got to defend yourself. You got to ball up your little digits and you got to go at it. This is one of those moments where, what are you going to talk about? What diplomacy are you going to bring to the table? And this is what I asked, the two people who were still there from the Rage Against the War Machine. I'm going, okay, sell me on the idea that we pull all the resources that we've given to Ukraine away. We pull the rug out from under them. How does the war end? And diplomacy. I'm like, yeah. You've said diplomacy. What diplomatic measures were you going to take? And again, they had no answer. And this is my problem with people who have these great ideas. They've got no answers. For me, the answer is you have to stop them in Ukraine. The Ukrainian people have to defend themselves. I do not advocate sending any American troops. I was not in favor of sending American planes to enforce a no-fly zone. None of our blood should be there. But ensuring that they have a level playing field seems pretty rational, seems pretty sane. So when the president goes over there and says, we're committed to you. We're committed to giving you the things that you need to help defend yourself, that just sent Republicans into a tizzy. And you could feel it just from the staffers who were around me talking about the issue and talking about the opportunity to attack the administration. Because of course, he hasn't gone to Ohio yet. And of course, the border, because they're always going to beat him up over the border. But then again, where's their fix? I know. We want to build a big wall, a big, beautiful wall. Because we're going to stop the drugs from coming into the country. And the sad reality is we know how the drugs get into the country. White people bring it in through legal checkpoints. How about we stop every product at the border, especially from China? Can't do that. No, that would be bad. But I found it interesting, and look, I love going to D.C. I love going to our nation's capital. There's so much there to see, and so many interesting, different, people that you run into because, I think I ran into like 6 or 7 people who weren't speaking English, and I couldn't figure out what they were speaking. But the fact that they were there and in awe of what we have built is pretty impressive and worth saving, I think. But I'll get to more of that a little bit later. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, just a couple minutes ago, Representative Paul Gosar from Arizona tweeted out, America should withdraw all personnel and equipment from Ukraine or adjacent thereto. Congress has not authorized war there. America should not send them one more cent, not one more cent, to defend the border. And I'm going, again, what comes next? What comes next? And how much is Russia paying you? I mean, I keep coming back to this. How much is Russia paying these people? How much Russian money filtered through the NRA has gotten into the pockets of these representatives? I mean, when you stop and you think about it, it's really quite. We've got the best best democracy money can buy, but I gotta wonder who's bought it. Let's go to the phones. Got Alice on one. Alice, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. I've got a couple of things to say, and the first one is I've got to share this with you. There was an article in the Washington Post today. Do you remember the conspiracy theory that I shared with you all?
Which one?
The one I made up.
Oh, yeah, okay.
There was an article in WAPO today about questioning whether the Catholic Church was getting too powerful and bringing up how many SCOTUS justices there were that were Catholic. So I wanted to share that with you.
Yeah, that's been around for a while, though. That one's been banging around.
So the second thing I wanted to say was the Republicans are going to flip out about anything dealing with Biden. I was speaking to someone yesterday, in fact, a council member in our little hamlet, and she was going on and on about how bad Biden was. And I proceeded to throw out, well, do you know? And, I'm bringing up the job numbers and everything else, and she was looking at me, and I said, you watch Fox News? And she said, yeah. And I said, oh, okay. And I thought, well, that explains it. But I think the big thing is because the Republican Party has been pretty much bought by Russia. I mean, that's really the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah, just look at what they're doing. I mean, the fact that I cannot fathom, and I can't get it through my thick skull. And this is what I was telling these staffers, these young kids who work for these representatives. When I was back when we were that age, we were still in the Cold War. And the fact that now we're siding with Russia is just it's almost more than I can take. Other than I understand, Russia hates the same people they do. I get it. I kind of get that, and that the money has filtered down, but I'm still struggling with it.
It has. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. It is what it
Vic,
is.
You have a good evening.
Thanks,
Vic.
Alice. I appreciate it. No, I mean, look, it's one of those things. I literally can't understand what the Republican Party is thinking. The party of Reagan. It is what it is. Now, also, Marjorie Trainwreck Green has her national divorce comments have gotten a ton of attention, and not the kind I think that she wanted. Because I'm looking at the comments, because I threw a comment out saying, look, the sad reality is red states take more money from the federal coffers than blue states. You've got blue states subsidizing these red states, and maybe we should talk about doing something about that. Now, understand, here's where my thinking is. I just wanted to point it out. I didn't mean to start a civil war. Because immediately the red states are, well, we got all the farmland and you wouldn't eat and all this stuff. And they go, who subsidizes the farmers? A massive farm bill. Massive. So if we didn't subsidize that, the price of crops would have to be astronomical, or the people producing those crops would have to work in poverty wages and poverty conditions. My other problem with this idea of splitting and punishing red states is because I know who gets punished. It's working people. It's people like you and me. It's the folks who get up every day and try and make it through to tomorrow. That's who's going to take it on the chin. It's who always does. The rich and powerful, they're going to be fine. The big landowners, the big corporate special interests, they're going to be just fine. But it's going to be working people who are going to take it on the chin. But I do think it's important pointing out that these red states, I think it was 8 out of the top 10 states that take more from the federal government than they contribute, are red states. And you know which ones they are. They're the southern ones. They're the ones who have the higher poverty rates. They're the ones who have the lower life expectancy rates. They're the ones who have the lowest unionization rates, which means their wages are lower. Their health security is lower. They didn't expand Medicaid. All of these things that make life difficult for working people. And interestingly enough, what they've done, and this is where it's brilliant on Marjorie three names is a spot, because understand, she's in a blue state. Biden won that state. You have John Ossoff won that state along with Raphael Warnock, and then Warnock won it again. So it's a blue state. With a crazy right-wing zealot congresswoman. And I look at this and I go, I don't want to divorce the country. I don't think you can separate the country. I think it would be dangerous. I think it would be terrible. I think we would be constantly at war with each other. We'd have trade wars. We'd have all kinds of horrible. And within states, because what this plays into is that rurals versus the urbans. And I can't tell you how many people I saw in the comments, because I did. I wasted some time on the train today, because I love taking the train into D.C. It's so easy. I wish we had more public transit and better public transit all across the country, but that's a different story. I wish I could get on a train here in Harrisburg and get into D.C. Straight without having to go to Philadelphia and all the way around. But if we were to tear everything apart, it would be highly destructive. And understand why she did that on President's Day. The reason she threw that out was, one, to just to get some attention, but two, and most importantly, is to continue to keep us divided and pitted against each other, so that we don't talk about the things that are our common values. I bring this up because there's a great video going around on the Twitters of a guy from East Palestine. And he's very candid. Just a working class guy who says, "Look, the most important thing is profit, not these people." He says it's just BS, and calls the companies blanking cowards and on and on. And this is the reality of where we could bring people together. Because the sad reality, these big companies, they don't care about you or me or anybody else. They don't care about the water that these people drink. And he said, look, do you think the crops that are going to be grown in this area, anyone's going to buy? He goes, I'm not going to eat this stuff from here. These people aren't going to be able to, their livelihoods are over now. And it comes down to, again, the people at the bottom getting steamrolled. I played a George Carlin clip not too long ago of him saying, look, the liberals and the Democrats are for people, helping people. The Republicans are for, and conservatives are for big money special interests. They're for corporations and the greedy. And, for me, this again comes back to, as I've talked about before, this idea of which side are you on in this divide? In this train wreck divide, where do you find yourself? And, what Marjorie Three Names and Lauren Boebert and the rest of them are in the process of doing is changing the narrative. Look how bad government is. Look at how badly government did this. Now remember, these are the very people who back during the Obama years held the country hostage and the globe hostage to screw every agency out of a portion of their budget. You remember Screwquester? Do you remember we were right at the end of the road? We were going to go into default if Democrats and Obama didn't give up. I think it was a 2% across the board cut. You go, wow, it's only 2%. You go, yeah, it's 2% over the course of decades. And what does that mean? That means, well, less opportunity to inspect, less opportunity to regulate, less opportunity to hold people accountable. Now, I find it interesting, the people who have spent all of their careers restraining government, breaking government, telling us it doesn't work, it can't work. The second something bad happens, the second corporate America does what they're going to do and what they always do, the first thing that they screamed out was what? Where's the government? And it's mind-blowing to me that, okay, I'm going to break something, and then when I need it, I'm going to go, well, where is it? You go, well, of course, dummy, you broke it. And this idea that they're the religious groups always kicking the poor, for instance, evidently Trump, I guess just again proclaimed himself the law and order president. He's now talking about, brutal ways of ending, I guess ending crime is the idea of doing this. We're going to end crime somehow. And how we're going to do this is we're going to go beat up on the homeless and the mentally ill. We're going to go and use, really aggressive, harsh tactics, like, throwing him in a jail cell freezer so that his body temperature is 72 degrees so that he dies in custody after a couple of weeks. Or you're going to starve him to death like they did in Arkansas. Because, that's what we do with the mentally ill. It's disgraceful what these folks have done. And here again, these are people who keep telling us end times are near. In fact, you got all these rich people who are preparing for the apocalypse by moving out west and building bunkers and all kinds of stuff because they know eventually we're going to wake up to the reality that we've been getting screwed for so long that we're going to put down the red hat and the blue hat. And we're going to end up coming after them, which is why they're trying to secede. Secession's on the table, folks. There's a political party, the Republicans. I want to do it again. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1846. That was the day Sarah Bagley became the first female telegraph operator. She was hired at the office in Lowell, Massachusetts. Sarah spent weeks studying the electrical theory behind the new technology and began her job in earnest. She soon quit in protest after learning her pay was far less than her male counterparts. Bagley was no stranger to labor struggles. She was among the many Lowell textile workers who struck in 1842. Bagley was one of the founders of the Lowell Female Labor Reform Association. She fought for the 10-hour day and better working conditions in the mills. Sarah also helped to found the labor paper, The Voice of Industry. When the Reform Association demanded state investigations into working conditions at the mills, Bagley stated, quote, "Is anyone such a fool to suppose that out of 6,000 girls in Lowell, 60 would be there if they could help it? Whenever I raise the point that it is immoral to shut us up in a room 12 hours a day, I am told that we have come to the mills voluntarily, and we can leave when we will. Voluntarily," she said. "The whip which brings us to Lowell is necessity. We must have money. A father's debts are to be paid, an aged mother to be supported, a brother's ambition to be aided, and so the factories are supplied. Is this to act from free will? Is this freedom? To my mind, it's slavery." Bagley returned to Lowell's Hamilton Mills after quitting the telegraph office. She briefly continued her activism until she married and moved to Brooklyn, New York. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Your doctor is out and unable to see you now. Not out for lunch or out on vacation, but out of medical practice. America's perverse healthcare system, which sublimates care to the profiteering demands of Wall Street speculators who essentially own today's system, has been driving out hordes of nurses, pharmacists, and now doctors. These practitioners take their Hippocratic oath seriously. First, do no harm. Yet, again and again, they see corporate managers of hospital chains, physician clinics, etc., doing severe harm, routinely slashing staffing levels, eliminating services, rejecting low-income patients, and raising prices, all to prop up the profits of rich absentee investors. A prominent physician recently wrote that in 2021 alone, 4 times more doctors quit the profession than joined. He says his colleagues are demoralized by, quote, "the disease systems for which we work." The disease is money. The primary measure of care is now how much profit the system generates for its uncaring corporate owners, so one's health is largely dependent on one's wealth. The morally abominable result is that hundreds of thousands of preventable deaths are occurring each year. Yes, profit-based health care is a killer. This is Jim Hightower saying, it's time to be blunt. For-profit health care is the creation of profiteers and the politicians they buy. It's insane to let their greed dictate the allocation and quality of this essential human need. Luckily, a better way is right in front of us. Medicare. This enormously popular public program of universal coverage for each and every American over 65 has proven to be an effective and fair system that is far cheaper and much, much more caring than Wall Street's privatized scheme. So let's eliminate the profiteers by extending Medicare to all of us. To help, go to ourrevolution.com/issues.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I gotta tell you, this next thing just has me, wow. You may remember during the Super Bowl there was an app ad, I guess it was, this Temu, I think it was called. Evidently, it's now one of the most downloaded apps in the country, and interestingly enough, it's China-based. Interestingly enough, there's a little loophole that, again, screws working people over, and I'm shocked that people would download it. I looked at it, going, no thanks. But here to share some thoughts on what this is and maybe why we should not. Just a thought. Maybe why we should not. I've asked our good friend Scott Paul to talk with us. Scott is the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, the website. Scott, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, it's good to be with you as always.
So walk me through this Chinese shopping app, Temu. What is it? I'm trying to figure out why is it here, but walk us through it.
Yeah. I wish I could say that I knew more about it, but I'm not going to download it, right? Either. But here's the deal. Yeah, if you saw the Super Bowl, you probably saw this ad for Temu, and you're wondering, what the heck is it? And there's another brand called Shein, Shein, which is a Chinese based fashion direct-to-consumer seller, and I'll tell you what these have in common in a second. So Temu is a little broader, not quite, not quite Walmart or Amazon, but it's got more stuff that people can buy at impossibly low prices. And the way it works, and this is the thing that folks should understand. First of all, obviously, if it's based in China, it has to answer to the Chinese Communist Party, and so they can provide you whatever assurances, on your data and your browsing and what have you. But at the end of the day, the Chinese Communist Party calls the shots on that. So that's number one. Number two, the prices that you're able to get on it are impossibly low because the app allows purchases that evade customs and duties law. And there's a feature of the law called de minimis. And so I don't know how often you travel abroad to like Mexico, Canada, or other places, Rick, but when you come back, you always have to do a customs declaration.
Yeah, no, I've gotten busted there, so yeah, I know all about it. Tried to bring back
maybe this is a bad example. No.
Tried to bring back Cuban cigars from Mexico. Yeah, I got caught.
Oh, well, there you go. Okay, well, you have to declare the amount of like stuff that you're bringing back into the United States that you bought abroad, and there's a threshold for travelers. Like if it's below a certain amount, you don't have to pay any duty at all. Okay, that's called the de minimis threshold for bringing in imports without tariffs attached to them. The problem is that this is like there's a loophole, and all these companies are jumping through it. Amazon is, the Shein is, Alibaba, and now Temu, where they're selling stuff straight from Chinese warehouses to consumers. They're not going through any middleman retailer, so there's no tariff being paid on these products. And so the irony of this, and hang on, the retailers, and believe me, I have many problems with them, like Target and Walmart. They are at least having to pay tariffs on imports that they're bringing in to the United States. And so, unbelievably, these companies like Temu are undercutting these other big box stores, amazingly. If you didn't think it could get any worse, it has. And so, unfortunately, it is the number one downloaded app on the App Store, on the Apple's App Store right now. And number two is another Chinese app, and number three is TikTok. So it is, taken us by storm, I guess.
Now, is that here in the U.S. or is that globally? Or
no, that's in the United States, I believe.
What does that say about us? I mean, we're in this weird kind of moment where, look, I was just talking a minute ago about the fact that, and we're about the same age, that I can't get it through my head how we've got Republican representatives who are siding with Russia, saying we should be pulling money out of Ukraine, and I can't get my head around. No. The Chinese app and people willingly going, yeah, I don't care. I don't care if the Chinese Communist government has all of my information and can monitor every keystroke. Because if you look at TikTok and their terms of service, the amount of information that they have access to, your photos, anything on that phone, your keystroke patterns, all of that stuff, I maybe I'm just old, but I don't feel comfortable letting you have that information, let alone the Chinese Communist government.
Yeah, it's a bad idea all around, which is why the people who are downloading it are teens who don't have fully formed frontal lobes for long-term decision making, and that others who are pretty carefree about things, young people who enjoy the content but don't think about the consequences, right? And so it is it's a challenge. It's this kind of like short-termism. It's like gimme right now, and if there's consequences later, well, there might not be. I'm not going to worry about those. But the problem is, for as bad as we thought it was, that big box stores were undermining and disrupting the retail system. This whole de minimis threshold loophole that a bunch of other of these apps and online sellers have found is just going to wreak havoc on commerce, and not for the good.
Right.
By the way, not for the good. This is disruptive in a wrong way. And they're going to bring in these products that are disposable. Some of them may be made with exploited labor or forced labor.
And who knows what kind of materials are in them? I mean, we've heard stories
Sure.
of kids' toys being painted with lead paint. You had the baby formula a couple of years ago with melamine in it that were making kids sick and I think killed a couple.
The dog food.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, all of that stuff.
Right.
So
Yep.
let me ask you this, and maybe maybe you don't know. When you're buying directly from the Chinese warehouse and you're giving your credit card information, your money, or however what guarantee you have you're actually not going to just get ripped off? I mean, I see a lot of this stuff where, hey, you can buy this kayak for $40. And I know people who have given them the $40 and never saw the kayak. It's one of those things that goes back to when I was a kid. If it's too good to be true, it probably is too good.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I think that in the case of Temu, that's a great question. We'll see how that works out. In the case of a lot of the online retailers that are just providing a platform and other merchants are selling on it, Amazon gets a nice out thanks to that, Section 230 or whatever. It's like, oh, we're just hosting this. We're not responsible for anything that happens on it. And so you're right. It is hard. It's a lot harder to get that stuff back than it is from an actual retailer. But this is something we should keep an eye on. And I mean, let me just say there is one thing that we can do about this, obviously, that other than not utilizing the app, and it's closing this de minimis threshold. And there's actually legislation that would do that. I think Congressman Blumenauer from Oregon was one of the sponsors. It's had bipartisan support. I actually think it passed the House of Representatives as part of their technology package last year, but the Senate didn't include it. And so that's something that could be done, actually, is closing that de minimis threshold. So that they can't get this loophole, because those deals won't look so good, really, after a lot of that. And and it's not subject to the other customs requirements. So Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act not applying to it and all of that. So I shake my head too. I'm like, how they're specifically doing this stuff so that they can do this end around about all these responsibilities and obligations that importers are supposed to have.
No, as I say about a lot of our billionaires, behind every great billionaire is a great crime. I look at Bezos. He didn't pay local sales tax for years and years and years, and gave him a competitive edge. This is again one of those things. You find the loophole, and our problem is we're too slow to slam this stuff closed. This should have been up and down already. This should have been no partisan. This should be something that everyone goes, yeah, we should stop this. This is a bad idea. I can't imagine. Is there a good argument for allowing this to happen?
There's not a great argument for allowing it to happen, other than the companies that like it, like FedEx or Amazon or whatever, would thinks it's going to be unfair and hard to enforce. It could, because it changes their business model, right? They don't want to have to deal with it, and they've kind of built a lot of it on the fact that they could do this like direct to consumer stuff and evade customs and tariff law. So we're going to do everything we can to expose this, and we're certainly going to support the de minimis reform legislation. We're going to push the Biden administration to see if we can do something about it administratively as well, because it's just not. I mean, it defeats the whole purpose of having rules if you can just totally work around. I mean, it's not even ignoring the rules, because there aren't rules. They're just they're not they're completely evading the rules.
No, but this is one of those things. What's it going to take? Is it going to take kids dying from melamine being in the baby formula? Is it going to take Is it going to take more of the horrible? And now with nobody watching and nobody able to do anything, and good luck trying to sue them. I mean, this is where I keep coming back to. As a consumer, we've got to be aware of where our protections are. Just like corporate America, they were crying and carrying on, they're stealing our intellectual property. Well, you're the moron that went over there. Had you stayed in a place where we have protections for intellectual property, you wouldn't have this problem. But we don't do that.
No, not enough. And so, part of this is corporate accountability. Part of this is legislative legislative reform. And it's not an accident, Rick, that these apps are being targeted towards kind of, the young and the vulnerable, right? And so it's like, oh wow, I can get this. I can get this new dress for $10. This thing looks amazing, and not thinking about the consequences.
And you get you bring it, you get it home, you wear it once, and it falls apart.
Yeah, right.
Or it turns your skin green.
Yeah, as they would say in the old country, it's a schmata. So just like an old rag. So, but you think you're getting a good deal on it. Yeah.
Now it's interesting because I was looking at Senator Chris Murphy from Connecticut's tweet about social media and how there's a loneliness epidemic in America today. It's driven by social media companies that build addictive products and an economy that leaves too little free time, and neoliberal economics, which has gutted the power of local communities. He says politicians should wake up. And I go, look, I look at these social media apps that keep feeding us this poison. In China, they don't allow 13-year-olds to see the same TikTok that they're shoving down our 13-year-olds. And I look at it myself. I look at some of the video files and the kind of content that they send me repetitively. There's got to be some kind of restriction, some kind of, I don't know. There's got to be something, and I know our Supreme Court today hasn't given me much hope, but there's got to be something that pulls some of this stuff back.
Yeah, it's the what you referred to, and Senator Murphy from Connecticut, really good guy. Has been focused on this, this dimension of loneliness that, a lot of people suffer from, old, young, middle-aged, particularly people who have felt displaced from work. And then what feeds into that? And you're right, social media, big part of what feeds into that and drives it, rather than creating a community necessarily, can be used to point out differences and can drive people into kind of deeper, darker places as well. The fact that the deindustrialization has been very isolating, and Rick, I'm sure you see this in Pennsylvania and the other communities you've been in. That that factory, that union or whatever, was the glue that held everything together. And when that's gone, people go their separate ways, and they lose those connections, and so it's been really, really hard. And obviously people are still, a lot of people in society are still working through how to talk about these issues, because they are complex. In many cases they deal with mental health crises that unfortunately are still mischaracterized quite a bit. But at the core of this is an examination of where there should be some accountability and how we can prevent a lot of this, Rick, to your point.
Yeah.
And because I think there's a difference between complete state regulation of all technology and media and the crazy wild, wild west where anything goes, and there's an unbelievable amount of harmful content on there that has been shown to drive people to do all sorts of unbelievably unimaginable things.
No. Look, I just look at my Twitter feed, the comments that I get from people a lot of time, and fortunately, I have thick skin; it doesn't bother me. But someone who takes their identity from how many likes or how many shares or how many retweets they get, and that's who they think they have to be. That kind of negativity, that kind of just vile hatred. I know could harm someone's mental status. I don't think it's healthy, because sadly, I think we're the worst versions of ourselves almost in every situation on social media.
Yeah, I think that is completely true. And it is, it's not a substitute for conversation, where the tendency is to be more civil. Which is what we need, really. We can agreeably disagree, but on social media that seems heck of a lot harder to do.
No, it is. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Scott Paul. Scott's the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, the website. I want to get into something positive here now, not because now I'm all flipped out here because now we're talking about social media, which I've been railing on with my kids because you've got young kids too. It's about making sure they don't get hooked on this stuff in the wrong ways, making sure that they have earned self-esteem and all of that stuff. And anyway, I want to talk about this EV charger rule that is stressing Made in America, because I think this is good stuff. This is important stuff. This is what we should be highlighting every day. The fact that we've got a president and an administration that's saying, you know what, if we're gonna remake the future, let's remake it with American products and American workers doing that. And I think this EV charger rule is a good first step.
It's an awesome first step. And let's first stipulate that no matter what your position is on the combustion engine or electric vehicles, eventually electric vehicles are going to be widely adopted because they're going to be cheaper to operate. Okay, that is just fundamentally true. That may not be true at this moment, but it is going to be true very, very soon. In fact, I just read that the price of a Tesla Model 3 now is lower than the price of the average car out on the market. And so let's just, setting aside all that other stuff, let's just mention that. So these cars are going to be made somewhere, and all this apparatus, the charging equipment, is going to be made somewhere. Question is, are we going to make it? Are we going to make it in the United States? We're going to import all of this stuff from China or wherever else. And so what this administration has done is make sure that the charging network that's going to be out there when you get out on the interstate highway and you need to stop by and take the 10 to 20 minutes to charge up, that all of that equipment, no matter who the maker is, if they're going to get a federal subsidy to put it in, it's got to be made in America, starting right now. And then it has to be made in, it has to not only be assembled in America, but a lot of the content has to be also from the United States within a year, too.
They were saying, I think the number was like 55% of the components within a year.
Yeah.
Now, are they planning on moving that down the road to a higher number?
I hope so. Yeah, because they are doing that with other things, and all of the iron and steel has to be melted and poured in the United States, 100% of that, okay? And so what this has done, Rick, and I hope your listeners get this because this is important, already you have a massive amount of investment around the country of companies that are building EV factories all over the place to build these chargers. At Tritium in Tennessee, there's companies in Ohio and Illinois and in California and in Texas and in Bowie, Maryland, and all over the place. I mean, there's a massive number, and there'll be more. There'll be more too. And so it is like this industry literally didn't exist a few years ago. Didn't exist. And so this is a great example of how if you have some investment resources, like if you have some federal money available, and you have a Buy America requirement, that you can spurt up a new industry in the United States where we didn't have one before. We simply did not have one, and so this is awesome, and we're at the very cusp of this, and so I think it's really exciting, and it's how industrial policy is supposed to work, is designed to work. And again, for anybody who says, well, we shouldn't be putting money at this, it's like, look, these things are going to be coming from somewhere. They'll be coming from South Korea or China or Europe or Japan. I want those jobs to be American jobs. And so I think that this is a great utilization of this policy to get us to a goal that's going to be good on a number of different levels for America.
Yeah, and I just don't want them to be American jobs. I want them to be American union jobs. Because as I say all the time, we got tons of jobs. They're just not that great right now. When we make them union jobs, they're going to be better. They're going to have better wages, health security, retirement security. That's what we need. When we did our 8-state tour, we keep coming back to people going, I don't miss the factory so much. I miss the people I worked with. I miss the security that the wages brought. I miss the wealth and the opportunity that I was given. They missed the job for what they were able to get from it. They put up with the work. They shortened their lives. They did all that. But it was about how they made their families better. And I think that's what we need to be talking about when we talk about these jobs. Yeah, we want to bring them back, but what kind of jobs are they going to be? That's my view. But this is good stuff. As always, great news when we can talk about making things in America. But Scott, I appreciate the time. As always, great stuff, my friend.
You bet, Rick. Happy to join you. Keep up the great work.
Thanks so much, our good friend Scott Paul. Make sure you check out their website, AmericanManufacturing.org. We'll get links out on social media. I can take a look at that. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show.
Phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1868. That was the day that the governor of California signed into law the 8-hour workday. The law was the result of a strong organizing effort led by